Hi, it's Rory from counsellingtutor.com, and I'm with Bob Cooke, the Manchester Institute for Psychotherapy, and we're going to talk today about training, about new ideas in psychotherapy, and more to the point about training in different models. And we often hear the word integrative used a lot in the world of counselling and psychotherapy. Now, you started off, Bob, as a TA therapist.
Yeah, as a transactional analyst psychotherapist.
Right.
And I trained for 6 years. I started training in 1985 and became certified in 1990 in TA, and then went on to be an international trainer and supervisor in transactional analysis psychotherapy. And when I started my institute, which is the Manchester Institute for Psychotherapy, I started to train people in TA to become transactional analysts, psychotherapists, and have been doing that since 1993 every year.
Wow. And you tell a great story about
that's nice of you.
About you started off with one room here, I think.
Yes, and this is a big building with 15 rooms in it.
It's a very big building. For those of you who don't know, well, maybe we'll do a virtual tour one day.
Yeah.
But it's a very, very big building. And you started off with one room, and slowly, as you expanded your portfolio of knowledge, the building expanded.
Yeah, a bit like a creeping sandwich. We just took over all the different rooms.
You're a bit like Ivy.
Like the Doctor Who's TARDIS.
Yeah. It is a bit like that,
going all the different rooms.
So you started teaching. You started as a transactional analysis.
Yes.
You trained in transactional analysis. Then you teach. You're a qualified teacher. You've got a PGCE.
Yeah. I did that years ago. I was a lecturer in another year.
Yes. So you're a qualified teacher.
Yeah.
And then you decided to train in relational psychotherapy.
Yeah. Well, it's actually I decided to train in integrative psychotherapy.
Right.
I joined the International Integrative Psychotherapy Association, which was formed in 1998, and its chairman or president then was Richard Erskine.
Oh yes, very well known.
He was a very well known transactional analyst and Gestalt psychotherapist, and he was very interested in the whole idea of integrative psychotherapy. I knew him very well because I brought him over here to do transactional analysis. So he sort of branched off and developed his own international organisation and his whole accreditation programme. So in the last 5-6 years I've trained in basically another second psychotherapy training.
Sure.
And I became accredited as an integrative psychotherapist. Some people call the training integrative relational psychotherapy. I call myself an integrative relational psychotherapist now, using transactional analysis.
Right.
And this model has become, I think, quite a passion for me, and it really informs me of how I work and gives me new concepts and ideas and models to become the basis for my work as a psychotherapist. And I just wanted a few minutes really to talk about the concepts, principles, history of integrative psychotherapy as I understand it in the model that I was trained in.
Sure. Well, before we do that, I think it might be useful. There might be people watching who are thinking this is all very interesting, but I have not a clue what integrative psychotherapy is. And I think on a very straightforward level, a lot of the therapies come from three roots. They come from the idea of Freud, which would say that a lot of our lives are driven by subconscious processes that we're not immediately aware of. So that's one school of therapy. Then there's the behaviorists. Now the behaviorist school of therapy, they believe that our motivations were driven by how we're conditioned. So if you think of people who slow down for speed cameras, that's a form of conditioning. There's a reward. The reward is you don't get a speeding ticket. So that's the kind of, and CBT is a form of behavioural therapy where people are asked to kind of think themselves out of their difficulties.
Yeah.
And then the last is the humanistic movement, which is a person-centred therapy. I'm a person-centred therapist. Work of Carl Rogers, and that talks about people kind of healing themselves from the inside out. So relational psychotherapy and integrative psychotherapy in particular is a bit of a blend of different models. So what models do you blend to be integrative? You say that you're a TA therapist, trained TA therapist, but do you use other models in this integration?
Well, that's a good introduction. I'm glad you said that 5 minutes. I think there's another thread, which is the spiritual dimension. But I'll get onto that in a bit. In terms of the definition for integrative psychotherapy, you're correct. It's a blending, if you like, of different ideas and different movements. I would say that the ideas that are integrated come from transaction analysis, Gestalt psychotherapy, self-psychology, and psychoanalysis. And of course the humanistic movement covers most of those.
It does. It does, yes.
The other principle within integrative psychotherapy that I understand it and the way I teach it and the way I use it is the integrating of the self. So what I mean by that is that you help people take back parts of the self which they've cut off when dealing with trauma.
Yes.
So you're helping the person become a whole person in the here and now.
Sure. So for those of you who are doing psychology degrees, this association would be a classic model where someone maybe has suffered abuse, maybe has had a trauma, disassociates part of their very existence because it's too hard for them to access.
Yeah, so the major thrust behind this, which does come from transaction analysis, is the idea of helping the person develop more robustly their integrating part of themselves, which we'll call for this purpose the integrating adult.
Yes.
So they can take back, as you quite rightly have said, the energies, the vitality of the different parts of the self which they protected to deal with the trauma.
Yes. Yes. So, in other words, on an emotional level, slowly one part of the emotional self reaching out and helping that traumatized self come back and integrate and become a whole. And in Gestalt psychotherapy, it would be called Gestalt, a whole Gestalt, the whole thing.
Yeah.
In person-centered therapy, we call it the Organismic Self. And in TA, you call it what? Adult. There you go. Which just goes to prove that they're not too far apart. Really.
No, it's about being here and now with the whole of yourself.
Yes.
If you think of the human organism as an energetic model, then through trauma you energetically defend by cutting off parts of the self.
Yes.
But the problem with that is you're hiving off different parts of energy.
Yes.
So by helping the person take ownership of yourself again, you're releasing a tremendous amount of energy.
Yes.
To be a whole vital self in the present.
Yeah, I think a way of kind of giving an expression of that would be that if you are disassociated, if you're hiding or pushing part of yourself away, it takes an enormous amount of energy, that, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
Incredible amount of energy.
That's why people get depressed.
Yes, because they're repressing themselves. Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know that when we talk kind of off camera, you've talked really passionately about this new model. I know we spoke a few months ago and you were really, really, really enthused and excited, and you described it as a psychotherapy MOT.
Oh, the evaluation that I did recently.
Yeah.
To end this 5-year psychotherapy training program in integrative psychotherapy, I got myself evaluated. I took a case study to a board of people who really questioned me or discussed with me, that's probably a better word, my thought processes and treatment with this client that I presented.
Yes.
And I became accredited as an international integrative psychotherapist. Hooray!
Yes.
So I'm now trained in 2 disciplines.
Yes, yes. And how do you think this new training, this new awareness, this new passion for the work, or this renewed passion for the work, how do you think that's impacted on your client work?
Oh, tremendously. Because it's taken me to a different dimension or a different level. Because some of the concepts in integrative psychotherapy I found so useful. Some of the ideas, some of the thought processes. I've gone to a deeper level in terms of helping the person really understanding themselves.
Sure.
And helping them, well, I've just said, and you've just said very eloquently, taking the lost parts of themselves back.
Bringing it back, yes.
That is why we call it integration.
Yes.
To integrate, to take back, become whole.
Sure.
And that has given me a great depth. And of course, the integrative psychotherapy movement that I trained in only started in 1998.
Sure.
I mean, some of the thoughts have been going on for years and years and years and years, of course, but I'm talking about the organisations as a very young, developing, and it has at its crux, which is I really like, the idea that the relationship between the client and the therapist becomes crucial.
Yes.
And all the latest research I know and have read about in 2013 shows that if we don't pay attention to the relationship between the therapist and the client, psychotherapy is not so effective.
Absolutely, and it's really interesting, isn't it, that if person-centered therapists are always trained, trained in the relationship.
Yes.
Whereas maybe people who are taught maybe cognitive behavioural techniques or TA, maybe more in the model and the structure. But you're right, the evidence, it's becoming more and more evident now. The quality of the relationship is a really good indicator of the outcome for the client, a positive outcome of the therapy.
Yeah, so this model is very relationally focused. That's why I call myself an integrative relational psychotherapist. And for me to learn the nuances of how to work with a client in what I'm going to call, and I'm sure you can describe it for the viewers.
Yes. The viewer.
Yeah. And, well, I hope it's many viewers. But the intersubjectivity between both of us. In other words, how does what's happening in the therapy room between the two of us inform us in the relational disturbances in a person's history?
Yes. And I think I would put that as that on a very kind of maybe simplistic level, is that if you're a client and you've had a past that is traumatic, frightening and fearful, and part of you is just trying to push that away, but that energy is being sucked from you because you really need to look at it, and that's when people enter therapy, when they feel they really need to work through their issues. If you've got a therapist who is showing those kind of conditions that provide warmth and genuineness and empathy, and working in that frame of reference, working in the client's absolute reality as near as you can get it, then of course they're going to be able to start to feel valued, feel secure and safe, which is the biggest part. That's the biggest part, and then be able to then walk back with you into that area and look at it again. It's almost, for me, and I don't know if it's the same for you, you're almost accompanying the client into that area of difficulty and offering that support to them.
And of course integrative relational psychotherapy draws heavily, at least the model I trained in, from transaction analysis.
Yes.
So the major model of the personality is still around parent, adult, child.
Sure.
Though seen a bit differently because of the integrating adult concept. But transaction analysis informs me, so the two trainings weren't too far apart because Richard Erskine came from transaction analysis, so he took and borrowed and lent on many of the different theories of personality. Some people would even say that his integrative relational models is follows on from transaction analysis, if you like. I see it as a more distinct, but if you're a TA student, many of the concepts are central to integrative relational training, which I undertook.
What do you think was the biggest challenge for you? You know, you're training in a new model, you've had 25 years experience in one particular discipline. What was the biggest challenge for you as you moved from kind of going from the one model to the integrative model?
Oh, well, I can answer that very distinctly, I hope. And that is that in using integrative relational theory demands that you know yourself well. And that you can use your sense of self in the relationship to aid cure.
Yes.
Well, many central concepts of transaction analysis, and especially classical transaction analysis, is more about analysis and more about early CBT thinking than how to use the relationship to aid cure.
Yes.
So for me, learning about myself, my own countertransference, my own child ego state, unresolved difficulties, if you like, and how to bring myself into the relationship, into that intersubjective process, probably has been the biggest learning for me in this training.
Yes. And you know, in intersubjective relational psychology, we call it, sometimes it's called relational depth. It has many names, but it is about that human connection with the client. So they feel valued, they feel heard, and it cannot be underestimated, can it? It cannot be underestimated.
No, you know, and it takes some learning, and what I mean by that is really to reflect on yourself, to understand yourself is the first prerequisite to be able to really use your sense of self in this relationship with your client to aid cure.
Yes.
And that you will not learn from a book.
No. I think that's really interesting about this time of year in August at the moment. We always get people phoning me up at the college, and they say to me, Bob, I'm thinking of doing a counselling course, but I'm a bit busy, so I think I try and do a distance learning one.
Oh gosh.
And I say, well, you know, I'm sure that it'll be very interesting for theory, but it won't tell you about the application, because you need to learn about yourself and your own processes, and that is so important.
Great.
It sounds like an incredible journey, a professional journey.
Yes,
you've taken, Bob.
Yeah.
You know, and if I sit here in the institute with my tea, and you know, which is great, and it strikes me that, you know, this whole institute has been almost a life's work, Bob. You're still alive, so we're not going to say it's
no.
But you can tell the passion of what you do. I can hear that, and I can see it in all the aspects, you know, and it's wonderful to see, Bob. Wonderful.
Yeah, I see. Thank you. I don't think it's any accident that I was so interested in transaction analysis, and for 25 years, 26 years taught it and trained it, and then hit on integrative relational psychotherapy. And if I think about this, and as you talked to me in 2013, I think, you see, I've created a family over the last 25, 26, 27 years. So it's been about integrating and taking back parts of myself. You know?
Yeah.
And that's what so attracted me to integrative relational work, because it helped me integrate myself as well as learning how to work with people and help them integrate their cut off parts of the self.
Sure.
And so it's all a system.
Yes.
It's all a relational system. And this institute, I hope, is very much seen in that secure, friendly, almost like a relational, family-oriented way. And my psychotherapy matches what I've created.
Yes.
Which I'm very proud of as I sit here.
Yeah, you should be.
So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about integrative psychotherapy, because it's been such a passion of mine for the last, God knows how long. And it's been a natural development from my beginnings in transaction analysis. And transaction analysis concepts are very much at the hub of integrative psychotherapy. So it's all part and parcel.
Sure. So, Bob Cooke, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And yes, for those of you out there, thank you for watching. Thank you.